Thank you, Inspector. Thank you for coming. Item 8 is the Cambridge City-wide 20 mile per hour project, and we're in the east, the phase 2 of this. I've got Andrew Preston from the City Council here, who will both introduce the report and I'm sure field any questions that come forward. I'll also invite at the opportune moment members of the public who've wishing to speak on this item. Mr. Preston.
Okay, thank you, Chair. First of all, a quick apology for the slight delay in the issue of the report. The consultation did only end 2 or 3 days before the report was due, so my apologies for that. We were still inputting the over 3,000 responses that we received to the consultation. So the report this evening requests East Area Committee to make a recommendation to the Executive Council for Planning and Climate Change, which will be taken. The final decision will be taken at environment scrutiny in July. Those recommendations are whether to introduce the limit on the unclassified roads in East Area, and then also whether to introduce the limit on all, none or some of the C-class roads within the East Phase area, which were identified in the consultation document. One correction in the report in 3.1, which talks about the budget. The budget was actually increased in February, approved at Council in February, from 460 to 600,000. That original budget was based on limited feasibility work at the time, and it also didn't take into account the committed sum that is now required to the County Council for future maintenance of the signs and lines that will be installed. The project was presented to this committee back in January, on the 9th of January this year, where we requested comments on the consultation arrangements and documentation. The committee did request the inclusion of Ditton Lane in the consultation document, which is a B road, as you know, in the north east area of the city. We put this to the County Council as their current speed limit policy currently precludes the introduction of 20 mile an hour speed limits on A or B roads. It's specifically mentioned in the policy. We requested whether a departure would be considered by the County Council. This was jointly considered by the traffic manager, the head of service, and the cabinet member responsible. And based on the fact that it is a B road and its nature is different to Victoria Road, where a separate consultation has just recently been completed on that B road, the existence of a speed camera that does indicate potential problems with compliance with the 30 mile an hour speed limit, and the general road environment not being suited to 20 miles per hour. So it was not included in the documentation of the consultation. There was also a request for us to interrogate the feedback to the consultation specific from the residents on particular C-class roads, and you will see that in this report. So the consultation was carried out between the 24th of February and the 30th of March for 5 weeks. We posted almost 18,000 leaflets to every single resident in the East Phase, so everybody had the ability to respond to the consultation. And you'll see we just had over 3,000 responses to those documents that were issued. Almost 95% of those were from residents within the East area. So there were 164 that were received from outside of the consultation area. We are able to differentiate between those in and those outside of the area. So it does equate to a 15.7% response rate from the local area, which is slightly above average for consultations. So in terms of the results, majority of respondees were in favour of the principle of 20 mile an hour, that's 72% across the Phase 2 area. In terms of the unclassified roads, that was a 69% in favour. We're thinking the difference between those two is based on the fact we're doing signs and lines only. That often slightly reduces the difference between those two questions. And in terms of extending Mill Road down to Pern Road, it was a 63% show of support for that. In terms of the other C roads, Coldham's Lane, Cherry Hinton Road, it was very much more of a borderline response, some in favour, some against. So it was almost a 50-50. But you'll see in the report we've also later on in 5.5 we've narrowed those percentages down to the residents on those particular roads, and 70% were in support for Mill Road, which was higher. 59% of Coldham's Lane residents disagreed with 20 mile an hour on Coldham's Lane, which is, you could say, potentially somewhat of a surprise. And then 55% of Cherry Hinton Road residents agreed with 20 mile an hour on Cherry Hinton Road. And in terms of the split, they were split into both of those roads were split into two sections, but the responses were very similar for both, and they almost cancelled each other out. So the percentage is the same for both sections. You'll see we've had some responses from some of the key stakeholders. You'll see in there that MenCap said no to all. East of England Ambulance Service said no to the section 2 of Coldham's Lane, which is the Romsey section of Coldham's Lane, and also no to the Cherry Hinton Road section 1, which is the section from Cambridge Leisure down to Budgeons roundabout. We have contacted them to clarify that further, because it was a response to the consultation, but we haven't had anything back from, haven't been able to get anything further back from them. Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce said no to all, and Stagecoach also said to no to all C roads, including the extension of Mill Road, but yes to all of the unclassifieds. So I've reviewed, obviously 5.5 I've already mentioned. It is worth noting that Cherry Hinton Road, the section from Cambridge Leisure down to Budgeons, as has already been mentioned this evening, has a speed camera on it, which, if that road was made 20 mile an hour, would have to be removed, because at the moment the GATSO camera, or going forward, the GATSO camera is not type approved by the Home Office for use within a 20 mile an hour speed limit, so that would have to be removed if it was 20 mile an hour was introduced.
Or replaced. Or replaced by another kind of speed.
Excuse me.
Potentially. In terms of some commonly occurring themes, enforcement, as was in the North Phase, was a common theme, which obviously we've been working very closely with the police, and the police have said they will enforce in exactly the same way as they would enforce a 30 mile an hour speed limit. It's 20 mile an hour is not a success if it requires the police to enforce regularly on a daily basis. That is not the basis for introducing 20 mile an hour limits. There are still some misconceptions about the impact of 20 mile an hour, particularly the issue of fuel consumption, pollution, etc., including buses. Coldham's Lane, Cherry Hinton Road being regarded as main arteries, and obviously one of the main reasons for people suggesting that wasn't suited to 20 miles per hour. Slight apology, I didn't actually include the speed results, which are actually on the boards over there, but just to run through those for those here present. In terms of bus speeds, the majority of streets that obviously have bus routes on them, the current average speeds are currently at or around 20 miles per hour. The exceptions for that are the Romsey section of Coldham's Lane, which is obviously the C road. The average speed was 24 miles per hour. Cherry Hinton Road, Budgeons roundabout out of town, so heading out towards Cherry Hinton, was 25. And Coleridge Road is actually showing to be one of the higher speed roads, was 27 miles per hour average, which is towards Mill Road direction. And then in terms of general traffic speeds, those that are outside the DFT's 24 mile average, the DFT's guidance is that 20 mile an hour shouldn't really be introduced on roads where the average speed is in excess of 24 miles per hour. Obviously the two roads that exceed that are Wadlows Road and Coleridge Road, both showing a 28 miles per hour average, which is quite a high average speed. And Coldham's Lane, the Romsey section of Coldham's Lane is 27 miles per hour, and again Cherry Hinton Road, Budgeons roundabout out of town, is 27. All of the other roads in the whole of the East Phase were either 24 miles an hour or less average speed. So it's showing there that the C roads probably are less suitable in terms of Coldham's Lane and the second section of Cherry Hinton Road, and obviously potential issues with Wadlows Road and Coleridge Road in terms of compliance should we introduce obviously a blanket 20 mile an hour on unclassified roads. So at that point I'm happy to hand over to members of the committee and the public to ask any further questions.
I'm aware that one or two members of the audience have come for this item, and I'll let them speak first so they can inform both councillors' sort of questions and understanding of this item, and they may well be more statements than questions, but we'll see. I've got Mr. Storer, who I've held his question back for now. Mr. Storer, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cambridge Cycling Campaign. Our response to the consultation is that we generally welcome the reduction in speed as we did in the north area, and especially extending the Mill Road all the way to the Perrin Road junction. We share the reservations about implementing a 20-mile-an-hour limit on Cherry Hinton Road and Coldham's Lane if there isn't any action taken to physically slow the vehicles. We don't believe that speeds will drop on those roads, and therefore we don't see the point in putting on a lower speed limit. We would like to see more action taken in the back streets in Romsey and in Coleridge to shut off more routes through motor vehicle traffic. The vehicles that you do experience speeding on those roads always seem to be ones cutting through, taking shortcuts through the residential areas. We would like to see, as in parts of Petersfield and in parts of Romsey as well, more cycle-only access through the roads. We feel that that might help reduce speeds. And otherwise, we'd like to see more other traffic calming measures put in to help make 20 miles an hour a more natural speed for vehicles using those roads.
Okay. The last couple of points are clearly related, but not within our gift on the back of this project at the moment. Mr. Woodburn?
Yes, I'd like to talk about this as a resident of Cherry Hinton Road. And some years back, I tended a dying man directly outside my house in Cherry Hinton Road, a pedestrian mown down at night by a motorist. And there was another death a few years back at the junction of Cherry Hinton Road and Clifton Road of a Japanese cyclist. And I believe there have been other deaths, but I don't have a record of those. It is a dangerous road. The Cherry Hinton Road is a special case, and we do need to bear this in mind. It's a dangerous road, a more dangerous road than many of the other roads in the area. It has a massive population of school-aged children, and note the catchment areas for the schools. They extend across Cherry Hinton Road, so you have children crossing the road in one direction in the morning, in the other direction returning in the afternoon. And of course these children will in general not have voted in this consultation. Their opinions do need, and their vulnerability does need to be taken into account. We have the Hills Road, the Hills Road Sixth Form College at one end of Cherry Hinton Road, and there are masses and masses of the young people attending that school who cycle along Cherry Hinton Road. If you live on Cherry Hinton Road as I do, you will see that the number of cyclists is exceptionally high, but not just cyclists, the number of pedestrians. And many of the pedestrians are going to the two pharmacies in the road. There's a branch of Boots just down the road where many elderly people of my kind of age are going to get their drugs and crossing the road in many cases to do that. I mean, it is a special case. Not many of the roads that we're talking about have pharmacies in them. Not many of them have catchment areas which extend across the main roads as these ones do. And the Hills Road school has a particularly, Hills Road Sixth Form College has a particular number of children of young people who cycle there. So this is a request that councillors give their active support to make Cherry Hinton Road a 20-mile-an-hour road. If we look at the Portsmouth case of introducing 20 miles an hour, the effect there, which I think Mr. Preston needs to take more account of, was that when all the adjacent roads were reduced to 20 miles an hour, these wider roads, the speeds were reduced in these wider roads because of the local 20-mile-an-hour limits, and it had that effect. So the current figures for speed are not going to be as relevant once you get the reduction in the neighbouring streets.
Conclusion, Mr. Wood.
Yes, I'm just coming to an end now. So up to date, I would strongly favour updating the speed camera. Now I understand that the present GATSO camera can't be altered, but what about a replacement camera? That should be considered. It is a serious problem, and once again I'd like to repeat my advice, and I want to end on this point. I'd like to repeat my suggestion that councillors and the police stand with me for an hour on a Friday or Saturday night and see the problem. It's a serious, serious problem, and something needs to be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Dunn.
Right, I might be in the minority here. I'm a car owner and I cycle occasionally. I'm getting sick to death of all the cycle issues in Cambridge. Everybody has a responsibility for their own safety. Just recently, the council paid 900 grand for an upgrade of the junction at the Catholic Church. Unfortunately, one of the early accidents there was between two cycles. Now, I travel also down Maid's Causeway every morning, and I stick religiously, although it sticks in my throat, I stick religiously to 20 mile an hour because I think it's absolutely absurd that there's 20 mile an hour down Maid's Causeway. The other day, I had two, not just one, two cycles come past me doing more than 20 mile an hour, and they also went through a red light, which was, so I'm getting sick and tired of the cyclist issue. Everybody has a responsibility for their own safety. And this is just an overkill because it's costing £600,000 plus 80 grand to maintain it. We also spent 900 grand on the safe junction at the Catholic Church. We're also paying £182,000 for cameras in bus lanes. Now, the council always cry and saying, hold on, we haven't got enough money for this, we haven't got enough money for pest control, £40,000. Don't you think it's a little bit overkill? And it's a shame that Inspector Poppet has gone. Oh, he's still there, is he? Oh, I do apologise, sorry, I didn't see you there. He's saying that he hasn't got enough officers to do all this drug, catching the people with drugs. He hasn't got enough officers for Mill Road. How the hell is he going to have enough officers for this 20 mile an hour? It's an absolute nonsense to spend this amount of money. And I think all it is Councillor Tim Ward trying to push this through at any cost. And I just hope that I live in Edward Street, been there for 36 years. I haven't seen anybody measuring any speed limits down there. I'm not too sure whether it happens or something, but I think it's a big joke. It's an overkill. And as I say, I'm most probably in the minority here, but I'm dead against it. Thank you.
Thank you. As members have indicated they wish to speak, clearly let's concentrate on the recommendations at this stage. We'll have a chance to read the report. Councillor Smartman first.
Thank you. First, just on the reference to Councillor Ward, I think I really do need to say that it wasn't only Councillor Ward who thought it was a good idea. There was a council motion. There was a motion in full council, which, if my memory is correct, was unanimous. We all supported consulting on it. So I just thought it was appropriate to say that. It seems to me that we don't need to discuss in any way. We just accept the blue line ones and Mill Road. The only things we really need to look at are the Coldham's Lane and Cherry Hinton Road. Along Coldham's Lane, as I think Councillor Burke mentioned last time before, I can't remember, we did do our own survey on it last year, and the negative response to the consultation does not surprise us. And I think it is reasonably, that backs up that the people on Coldham's Lane, either because they don't think it'll be observed, or for whatever reason, and it's not much point going into it, they don't want it, and therefore I would not be wanting to support making a 20 mile an hour speed limit on Coldham's Lane. Cherry Hinton Road I know less about.
Thank you. Clearly, we as an East area aren't deciding anything. We are making a firm or clear recommendation to the Executive Council and the Scrutiny Committee in July, but clearly we hope, since we are representatives of the East area, our views are given the consideration they should be. Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I want to actually reinforce a lot of what Councillor Smart said, also come back to a couple of points that were made by members of the audience. It wasn't Councillor Ward's motion, it was mine, and I'm glad to say it was unanimous, so if you want to blame anyone, blame me. On being overtaken by cyclists, firstly, is understand speed limits don't actually apply to bicycles. Secondly, driving in Cambridge, as I do a lot, you kind of have to get used to being overtaken by bikes because you're always in traffic jams and bikes go past you. I mean, it's just better to travel around by bike in Cambridge. I'd also point out that living in the Petersfield 20-mile-an-hour zone, I was nearly run over on the zebra crossing a couple of weeks ago by a car driver who didn't stop. I jumped out of the way. Now, my observation would be that if that had been a cyclist and I hadn't jumped out of the way, if the cyclist had hit me, I might now be here with, I don't know, my arm in a sling or something. If the car had hit me, I'd be dead. So I think that, there is an issue there to think about. Coldham's Lane, yes, very much. I think Councillor Smart is correct. The residents don't support it. It wouldn't make sense just to make that little section between the end of section 2 and Newmarket Road 20 when you're going straight from 20 to 30, and that's always a traffic jam anyway. It would just be a waste of signs. Cherry Hinton Road, again, willing to follow the lead of ward councillors on this. I will just add my own observation. A few years ago, I was driving along Cherry Hinton Road towards the city. I'd just gone past Fern Road. I was doing 25 miles an hour, as I recall, and someone overtook me doing about 40, pulled in at the last possible minute because someone was coming the other way and almost hit them, and they took my wing mirror out, and it's the only car accident I've ever had in Cambridge. But yes, it is a dangerous road. If the implication of making it 20 is that the speed camera is taken away and can't be replaced, then I think that might actually be counterproductive, and I think the cycling campaign makes a valid point here. They don't support it. The average speeds don't suggest that it would be observed. If we take the speed camera out, the average speed might go up. So, again, I'm happy to follow the advice, the lead of Coleridge ward councillors on this, but it seems to me that Cherry Hinton Road and Coldham's Lane probably shouldn't be included in this. All of Mill Road, yes.
So I'll move swiftly on to the Coleridge councillors. Councillor Herbert.
In response to one member of the public, I think there is a unanimity amongst councillors that the change will reduce overall traffic speeds. We're not expecting that people will suddenly travel at 20 miles an hour, but the benefit is there, and I think there will be results that we can monitor. In terms of the issues that we've got before them, I think, as Councillor Smart said, there is a couple of issues that was clearly a public view, and I think the public has given us a mandate on those ones. I think in terms of the Cherry Hinton Road one, I'm very happy to spend some time with James Woodhead on that junction. But the two bits of data that kind of prevent us saying that we could make 20 miles an hour work on Cherry Hinton Road are firstly that the current speed there isn't far off 20 miles an hour, but it isn't except at sometimes in the night, reckless driving. But the other part, I think, is just that we can't, if the majority of the public in East area who voted say they don't want 20 miles an hour on Cherry Hinton Road, that kind of tells us that they're not going to observe that speed limit. So reluctantly, because I personally would welcome it down that stretch, I think that the right approach is to go with those two decisions where we've got a clear view and continue to monitor the issue on Cherry Hinton Road. One other comment from Coleridge, because we've got a Coleridge Road,
if we've got a residential road where people are regularly braking 30 miles an hour, then we need to do something about it. And so whilst strictly within the rule book we should be looking at this particular road, I think, and we know because it's been an issue for us for all of the time that Councillor Benstead's been a councillor, a road like Coleridge Road we should have as 20, and we should look at what other measures are needed. And we have pressed for issues like the rural type activated speed cameras, which dogmatically, I would say, and I don't often say that about council officers, there are county officer views about the way roundabouts are designed and about some of these measures, which I think we really need to have a look at. And speed activated signs in some of the streets are an important part of getting the community to accept, and some of the errant, particularly late night drivers, to realise that they're putting people's lives at risk.
Councillor Benstead.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of handily coming in there from my Coleridge College. I'm pleased to see Mill Road continued all the way through now, including Brookfields. Let's be pedantic, including Brookfields up to Pern Road. I suggested it here at East Area Committee some while ago. The highways people thought it wouldn't work. I believe that area that isn't 20 miles an hour at the moment is one of the contributory factors to Coleridge Road having a higher speed as well, because people come down Mill Road doing a faster speed, turn into Coleridge Road. It's a nice wide road. I think the majority of car drivers do stick within the speed limits. If not, the courts would be so busy dishing tickets out they wouldn't know what to do next. The majority of car drivers do endeavour to keep to the speed limit, and if we brought the 20 mile an hour speed limit into Coleridge Road, then I believe that the speeds would come down. When we do door knocking in that area, we are told time and time again by the long-term residents in that street, do something about the speeds down here. We're talking on all of these roads about average speeds. If the average speeds are 20 miles an hour, it means there are some times when the speed is much faster than that, and other times, and we know what times of day they are in the likes of Cherry Hinton Road and Pern Road, when those speeds are much lower than that. So must be times when the speeds are considerably faster than the average speeds that are recorded here. So Councillor Owers has brought this up as well. Coleridge Road is an area that has needed special treatment for some while. I welcome 20 miles an hour there, and with regard to Cherry Hinton Road, I would be interested to see what the return was and who returned the results on that. We would. The member of the public said this evening, the young people, that the children haven't had a vote in this, but their parents have, and I would be interested to see in Cherry Hinton Road what the split was between, and I'll be a bit controversial here, between long-term residents and householders and those who are living in rented accommodation on Cherry Hinton Road. There is a difference in split in parts of the area. Whether people who don't live in are home owners on Cherry Hinton Road wouldn't bother to return the survey anyway, I don't know. But if we feel that there is going to be a difficulty in getting this enforced on Cherry Hinton Road, then I think we need to watch the situation. With regard to the speed camera on Cherry Hinton Road, if the speed camera is calibrated to 30 miles an hour at the moment and it's picking people up on average 35, 36 miles an hour, I'm led to believe from speed cameras, if it remains and people get caught on there, would be breaking the 20 mile an hour speed limit by a huge margin and would be risking their licence by quite a bit. So I don't think we need to be throwing this one in as taking the speed camera away or the speed camera not working as an issue. It's there. It will. There may well be issues that people. I wasn't breaking the speed limit by that much. It wouldn't be going off if you weren't doing over 30. We shall see.
Councillor Roberts.
Quick one. Is it possible, you were referring to obviously Wadlows Road, is it possible to isolate the responses from the surrounding roads to find out what the will of that particular area is, and then to have that reported back to the councillors for Abbey.
Chair, yes, it is possible to narrow down just Waterlows Road as we've done with. It does take some time. That's why we've only done the C roads. But yes, we can certainly provide that information.
So just to clarify for me, if the speed is above the recommended, is it 24 odd miles an hour, we can still go ahead without too many problems if the will of the people of Waterlows Road was to go for 20 miles an hour.
Obviously, Waterlows Road is incorporated within the unclassified roads in general, so all of the blue roads. So at the moment, there is no proposal based on what's been consulted to separate out Waterlows Road or Coleridge Road. There could be something that this committee wants to do or doesn't want to do, but there is no proposal to separate that out at this stage. But the average speeds, as you know, were a lot higher on that, similar to the Coleridge Road. Those were the two problem areas. It is guidance from the DFT, the 24 miles per hour. It's basically saying that it's probably not appropriate you're not going to get the benefit of introducing 20 miles per hour on roads that considerably exceed 24 miles per hour average. So there will still be, obviously, as we've discussed, potential issues on Coleridge and Waterlows Road where further measures other than just signing and lining may need to be considered. But we will obviously be reviewing the impact of 20 mile an hour. As has been mentioned quite a few times this evening, having 20 miles per hour as a default on all unclassified roads in the city will have a major impact on car drivers in the city in terms of the default speed in residential streets being 20 miles per hour, whereas at the moment you drop from a 20 to a 30 to a zone to a limit. So there will be a big impact in the city from that point of view. So that may have more of an impact than we think, but it will be looked at and reviewed in future to see how it is impacted on Waterlows Road.
I've got another 3 indicated and one wants to come back. If we could, again, be brief, please. Councillor Ellis.
Oh, I'll be brief. I used to live just at the other side of Cherry Hinton Road, and I used to find speeds quite excessive, particularly at the times that have been described. There are a lot of children who live around there. Whenever I've knocked on the door of that area, I've had a lot of people complaining strongly about it, which is partly obviously a question that we need to enforce these things better. But the problem with this is that obviously there's a contradiction between the consultation results from people who live on Cherry Hinton Road, who have, a majority of whom want it, versus the whole of the consultation area. And for my 2 penneth, I was elected to represent the people who live on Cherry Hinton Road. I don't see any. I agree with the public speaker, and I personally would support 20 miles an hour on Cherry Hinton Road. That's just my view.
Councillor Saunders.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I think there's a lot of talk about cycling here, but I don't think that is the issue that's driving this need for a 20 mile an hour anyway. We've got a lot more people cycling in Cambridge than anywhere else, and that creates a problem of its own. And whatever the speed limit is, we're going to have those problems of managing how to integrate cycling and cars. Just for the record, I'd like to say I'm a member of the Cambridge Cycling Campaign, so I have a personal interest in that, which you ought to probably make a note of since I've said that. The whole programme here is about improving the environment for people who live here and having quieter streets, a more sensible approach to work to those side streets really matters. I'm pretty much convinced that the blue roads and the side roads are a no-brainer. The only issue is really, the issues that people have highlighted is the Coldham's Lane and Cherry Hinton ones, which are the things we've got to pay a little closer attention to. I'm minded to take the view of the residents, and having consulted them, I'm going to go with what they say. But I'd just like to put on record the fact that what was said about Coleridge Road and the problems there, and the fact we've got high speeds down there in what's essentially a residential area, also apply to Mill Road. And that idea of actually taking longer term views of how to change the behaviour of people driving in those streets by other methods, which may include temporary signs or harder engineering, which is something we should look at in the long term.
Councillor Johnson, do you still want to come in? No? Okay. Mr. Preston, you want to pick up any of the questions that were asked? Well, go on then, Councillor Benson.
One small pedantic point. We appear to have annexed part of the south area. Walpole Road, St Bede's Crescent and St Bede's Gardens.
Sorry, Chair. In terms of the boundary dropping into those on the plan, that was done purposely because it is the residents that will more often than not go out onto Cherrington Road from that direction. You could go further and further and further, but you end up consulting most of South area. But that was the reason for doing that on those streets.
You convince the electoral commission.
Councillor Herbert?
Yeah, if there are other members of the committee willing to put forward to the Executive Council that Cherrington Road is also 20 miles an hour, then I'm willing to support that. But I suspect that we'll have a further discussion about that at the main committee.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just confirm, just that everybody's clear, the average speed, current average speed on the section 1 of Cherrington Road, so the section from Cambridge Leisure to Budgeons, is actually within the DFT's guidance of 24 miles per hour. Yeah. So just wanted to make that clear. So it is within the guidance for it to become a 20 miles per hour. And the bus speeds are at or around 20 miles per hour currently, according to the data that we've received. But obviously, drawing your attention to the stakeholder responses, the East of England Ambulance Service objected to it, and so did Stagecoach. I just wanted to highlight, because I think it's the first phase of the first stage of Cherrington Road is obviously the one that has been discussed predominantly.
Okay, so can I focus members' attention on the recommendations? 2.2 small 1, I get the feeling that's probably fairly consensual in terms that we do want to introduce limit on the unclassified roads in the East Phase area. Yep. Okay. And if someone would start me off with a proposal on 2, that will be a help. I think Councillor Smart did that in her first remarks, so maybe she wants to repeat it.
Well, to take them one at a time. Yes to Mill Road / Brookside.
Up to Fern Road, yeah.
No to Coldham's Lane.
Would you wish me to put that as a vote or accept that? Yeah.
And I'm willing to support Councillor Herbert on Cherry Hinton Road, but that's for somebody else to say, I think, rather than me.
Well, I think we should propose it, and we should have a further discussion about the issues when it goes to the Environment Committee.
I mean, clearly, if there's a vote on it and there's a split of opinion, that will be recorded, and the Environment Committee and Councillor Ward or whoever can sort of bear that in mind at the later date. So if I suggest from the Chair that we don't include Cherrington Road, and that's a bit of a strange way about it, or do you prefer me to do it the other way around? Do the positive, that we do include Cherrington Road in the 20 mile per hour limit. Those in favour of including it in the limit, please show.
6 votes, Chair.
And those against?
2.
2. Okay, fair enough. Has that covered it, Mr. Preston? I think that's...
It has. Can I just very quickly, for the benefit of those here as well, just clarify the process from here. These recommendations go to the Executive Councillor for Planning and Climate Change in July. That decision will then go to County's committee process, as it will be then, to decide whether it should go out to the statutory traffic order process, at which there will be a formal stage of consultation where any objections received to that will be determined, again potentially through the committee process at the County Council, who will then decide whether the actual traffic orders are actually implemented and made, and that will then the timescales for all of that and for implementation would mean that the East Phase could actually be implemented and the signs going in towards the end of this calendar year, completed by the end of this calendar year.
Speedy it ain't.
Okay, thank you.